All right. It's attempt number 3. Yeah. We had something semi-successful 2 weeks ago. Last week was a travesty. On my monitor screens here, it says excellent connection. Not seeing that problem. Yes, okay, so I'm visible. See if I'm real time and I'm wiggling and jiggling. How's audio? Am I making sounds? I'll wait, for a minute or two. We can shrink that down. All right, today is my big conscious effort not to rub my nose sometime during the show. We shall see. Hello? Can anybody hear me? Nah, okay. I will do so. Okay, very good. Thank you, Tullowit. Oh, it feels good. It feels good. We are knocking these problems out. Yeah, Patricia, I didn't follow up with you, but you were right. I was audio slightly out of sync. Of course, there's always something, right? Well, we're better than we were, so I'll live with that for the moment. That's all right. I like sync with with a CH. I'm trying to think of the word that you used, Patricia Grace. Tinkering. Yeah, so after the show, I tinkered for a little bit and didn't really get a satisfactory solution. And then I tinkered again the next morning and found the problem. And we are in Biznewski. So once again, it's just the three of us. But let me get ahead of myself here. For just the three of us. There was a question posted on Reddit the other day, 3 or 4 days ago. And it seemed really, really obvious. And there were people making up these, conditional answers. Well, yeah, that's right. If it's a foggy Tuesday west of the Mississippi kind of thing. And I just said, no, look, this is really simple. Do this and here's your answer. But there were so many arguments. I thought, wait a minute. It's not fair of me to just rely on institutional knowledge that's 30 years old. Maybe something has changed. And so I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole and said, oh my gosh, there has been massive amounts of change. Everything we know is wrong. And so I started some research and I shared the conundrum with our back channel tech folks. And we started kind of an early discussion and started getting into it. And then late that night, I got a text from my boss, my old boss, Mike, and he says, looks like we better get into this topic. And I assumed that he had read my post and notes, but no. I learned the next day that an email had been sent to him and I, apparently from the same person who posted to Reddit and said, hey, what's the story with this? So now we got 4+ tech weenies digging down. We're going to find the answer to this thing. Took a solid day. And I'm happy to say I found it. What we were looking for, what we worked so hard for was to find an authoritative answer. For all of this stuff, there were basically 2 interpretations of the right thing. I know you're dying to know what it is. Maybe you already do, but let me bear with me while I tell my story. And so it was one or the other. And, we tried to logic it out and fine. We got the logic and I'm fairly confident based on logic that this is what it is. But we need some definitive, authoritative confirmation. And the best definition would come from IEEE documentation. But I haven't been an IEEE member since I was in college, and I could afford it back at student rates. And if you're not an IEEE member, then you got to cough up some fairly major bucks for some of their standards. Somebody's got to repost it. And one of the back channel guys, one of my coworkers, he went and tried to find a back channel version of it, and no luck. He found something, but it wasn't what we were looking for. And so I head scratched, and I said, you know, here's another side story. One of these things is true. And there are testers out there that test these things. I wonder if the testers deal with this new content. And then the light bulb went off. Wait a minute. If they do, we know who the best equipment maker is in the world for testing. So I'm going to go check out their site and check out their testing equipment and see what I can find. And sure enough, what we had determined logically is exactly what they test for. And so we took that as definitive. Hey, all done. Stick a fork in it, pull it out of the oven and wait for it to cool, and we'll talk about this. Then it was decided, informally amongst us, that this is no good until we test it. Okay, so everybody's got ideas on how to test it. And I had a concern. I said, wait a minute. If any of the tests that we do, even if the system that we're creating is flawed, the test can still look right, because a partial flaw in this system we're digging into is still functional, and the equipment that is normally used to do this is going to show a successful connection. So we need something, once again, more authoritative. So I was working, this was all day yesterday, and I had real work to do, and I had real prep to do. There was Mike show to prep for, and some stuff that I'm working on for a real company. But every now and again, I would take a brain break and go dig down the rabbit hole. And once again, almost by accident, look at this. I found a utility that only works in Linux. There's not a Windows version of this thing. There might be, but not of this particular software, that will do a full analysis and test once you have a connection. All right, so we've got all these things together. We found new technology. We found that everything we've ever said is accurate, but no longer complete. So Mike is going to do a show on some of it and demonstrate the testing. I'm going to do a show on it, and it's a follow-on to today's show. And I'm not going to do it next week, because next week, Thursday, is February, 15th? What's today? This is the 9th plus 7. That's the 16th, which is 2 days past Pi Day. So good golly, Miss Molly, I'm doing Pi Day no matter what comes. So I got a Pi project for next week I'm very excited about. And then the following week, we're going to come back and finish up this topic. And it's pretty quick for, it's quicker than my story there. We're back. Things are normal. Yes, iced tea. Sun tea. Even better than iced tea. All right. Well, turnout is better than it's ever been for our shows so far. Our one successful show and our terrible show that's gone away. So let's see what's in notes. Anybody got my quotes yet? You can look them up, but I'd rather you not. I touched my nose. Sorry. It itched. I'll try to stop. But again, I've got this whole batch of quotes from a favorite movie of mine, certainly top 5. Might not be top 1, but it's definitely in the top 5. No worse than top 7. And I'm just going to throw lines out from that until I run out of lines. How many more do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a great. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. That's going to be a tough one. I might be able to get that. 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 30. We got Okay, about 30. 30 weeks of quotes from that. I'll probably get bored with that. So maybe not, huh? Feels so good to be with you guys again. And the count is climbing. Hey, if you're here and you haven't checked in yet, post a hello. Just let us know you're here. And I can't see it. I use a different screen now than when I'm producing somebody else's show. So I don't know how many likes or not likes we get. So if you would be so kind, hit that like button. I'm not monetizing this. I don't get any money. But what will happen is over time, people will look for technology shows and Dave Rush shows and Raspberry Pi shows. And the more likes that they get on YouTube, the higher up in the hit rate they appear when they do searches. We want them to see the show. I talk about this. So in planning for ADRAMADA, sorry, I'm looking for messages rolling by. I didn't want to do the same the same uniform that I did every week. It was a different Hawaiian shirt every week in the old show. So need something new, and you know my love for Linux and my love for Raspberry Pi and all things associated therewith. So I decided to get as many different Linux shirts as I could. And I've got 10 or 11 right now. I got an Andromeda shirt, and I will have more. But so this one is one of the first ones that came in. I mean, I have some other ones from like the one I wore 2 weeks ago from Rocky. Thank you. And last week I had a different one on, but since almost nobody saw the show and we deleted it, that'll wind up right back in rotation. But I ordered a whole bunch of different Linux distro shirts from that big Asian order site. And I looked at the way they measure things, and I was a little suspicious. I said, look, I'm wearing smaller shirts now. I can wear larges. But as I looked at the measurements on that thing, they measure shoulder to shoulder width and some of the things. I said, that's not a large. I better get an extra large from this particular vendor. So I bought this extra large. This puppy's is somewhere between a medium and a small. It crawls into your pits. There's no space here. This is, if I move that another millimeter, you're going to see my family heritage is not that of a smooth man. So this one is going to get one wear, and then it's going into inventory, and it'll probably never be seen again unless I can get down to 140 pounds. But love the idea of a red hat shirt. It's low but hearable. Well, wait a minute. I missed that message. I need to get the other earbuds out. Okay, I can do two things. First of all, I can bring the mic a little closer. And second of all, I can raise the volume. I'm afraid to go over peak the thing like that. Let me know how bad that is. Check, check, check. Now I'm getting an echo in here in the room. All right, I can't make it any. It's making my desk vibrate. All right, I can't get that any louder. At this tone, I am just fully beyond peaked in the red. It's too much. I'm blowing the system away. That's got max volume. Well, we're working on the technology here, but we are definitely better than we were. All right, notes. So let's start this thing off for real. Welcome, first of all, to the third week of ADRAMADA. Another Dave Rush, Ask Me Anything, Digital Alchemy. Just because we needed two more letters to make it seem kind of like Andromeda, I didn't want to do a drama. That didn't make sense. And we're here. We meet once a week, in theory, to talk about broad spectrum technology. I don't focus on CompTIA or exams. I'm not averse to doing those things. I can't do anything that competes with anything that my employer does or takes away from something that any of their shows or presentations might do. So if I get into something, it'll be greater depth, or it doesn't deal directly with the objectives. It might deal indirectly. You get the idea. But it's not a CompTIA show. It's a technology show. So we talk about anything from electric cars to electric guitars is kind of where I went with that early on. The show is devoted to disseminating information about the use of technology. In particular, we're interested in how the advancement of technology impacts, doesn't necessarily improve, our daily and long-term lives. I am David Rush. I am your tech from Texas. This is ADRAMADA. Topic wide-ranging. I'm not going to read all that junk. Digital Alchemy. Technology doesn't have to be digital, so we'll talk about anything. And I've said it before, though we're still new. We're still new, so I'll be repeating some of this stuff for a while. Topics are wide open here. I don't have to be politically correct. I'm not going to go out of my way to be politically incorrect, but we won't shy away from the hard topics. So we can talk about social topics, religion, sex, politics, COVID. But, we want to focus on technology. We are into March. I did some of this list the other day, but the other day is gone. So where are we at here? This is March the 9th. So we got a few fun days left in the month. This weekend, Sunday night in the U.S., 2 a.m. Monday morning, we are going to set our clocks forward. That means if you are watching this internationally or someplace where they don't change clocks, like Western Indiana, yeah, it's Western, and Hawaii, of course, our good friend Tullowit living in paradise. That wasn't a nose scratch. That wasn't a nose touch. It was something different. Then the show will be on an hour later for you next week, and the same with the two shows that I produce on Monday and Wednesday. So we will be switching to daylight savings time, saving, it's singular, instead of standard time henceforth. So it's still going to be 7 o'clock my time. It'll just be 7 daylight instead of 7 central. Tuesday, try that again. Yeah, Tuesday. Is that right? Nobody's going to do this? What a disappointment. Yeah. Oh, there's a bummer. So Tuesday is Pi Day, right? 314, 3.14. Nobody's got a show that day. I don't have a show. My old boss doesn't have a show. He does his on Mondays and Wednesdays. So the day will go unmarked. Everybody holds their breath to see if Raspberry Pi organization releases something new. I hope not. They need to get caught up on the stuff that's not new. Day after that, Wednesday, is going to be March 15th. And if you watch the other shows, my boss is not going to do the Wednesday night show next week. Our good friend Steve Nicholson will be doing the show. I don't know what he's doing it on. I invited the slot to him to give the boss a night off. And he said, yes, absolutely. He said, what topic? I said, your choice. Pick something you're interested in talking about and do it. Just make sure you let me know at least one day in advance, preferably more, so I can make banners for the thing. Then my show will be on the 16th, 2 days after Pi Day. It'll be a Pi-oriented show. The next day, St. Patrick's Day here in the U.S. The next 3 days later, Spring Springs. Spring will have sprung, March 20th, the spring equinox. All right, so lots of good stuff coming up as far as date goes. I haven't yet made any changes to the website since I first got it. We got a long ways to go on it, and I'm very busy with a work project, as I've earned always. Had a meeting about it today. We'll see where that goes. And at least 2 of you are here that I have invited to potentially, no potential, it's going to happen, to be a moderator on a new service that's going to happen very quickly. We have all just been kind of waiting for something to happen to see how this new blessed event is going to happen. How it's going to happen is the focus there. So it was going to happen, and there have been meetings all week this week, and we're supposed to get the answer tomorrow at 11 a.m. my time. Whatever the answer is, we have a plan of action, which I will meet with my committee on Tuesday to put our final rubber stamp of approval on the whichever plan of action we're going to go with. And then on Wednesday, we pull the trigger. It's very exciting. It's a total seminars thing, so I'm not going to steal the thunder here. Some of you get kind of a general idea of what's going on with that. But wow, exciting, exciting, exciting stuff. Let me tell you another story of Dave's Adventures of the Week. Let's see who's popped up here. I see some posting stuff that's happened here. I keep leaning back so my red hat shows up. Linux stuff, yes. You are getting more and more into Linux. You need to hang more with Alice. The invisible Alice. Yeah, she'll be an hour earlier. Exactly right. Later. Yeah, I think you're later because it's earlier for me. I don't know. I don't care. You're 4 hours earlier. There we go. Pretty sure it'll be earlier for you. East Coast goes from 5 to 6 hours ahead. Okay. Whatever it is. It's 7 my time. Time change goes an hour forward in spring. Hawaii does not observe. They are non-observant. They are infidels from the grand clock change world. I have a side hustle, as some of you may know. And I'm getting ready to close the doors on it. It exists. It's a rental, a party rental thing. We rent PA systems, audio systems, uplighting, dance lighting, stages, pipe and drape, microphones up the wazoo. And we brought that into existence as an income augmenter for paying for the kids' tuitions. Well, May, the blessed event, the walking of the stage happens, and then the side hustle does not need to exist anymore. Huzzah! And so we're up against, can we sell it as a going concern, or are we going to have to piecemeal it out and sell it as assets? So I'm keeping my options open. It has a website, Proco Audio, well, all one word, procoaudio.net. And I have everything set, have had everything set to auto renew. And I got a notification that says auto renewal is coming up. And I went to check to see what they were going to charge me. And my lovely brown hair a week ago turned suddenly this color. And so, well, that's just no good. And I got in touch with their customer service. Oh, yeah, we had to raise prices. And wait a minute, you don't have to raise prices. You got lots of competitors out there who are still insanely cheap, especially compared to you. There's something like 10% of yours. No, it's a supply chain. It's a freaking website. It's a web host. What do you need to ship in electrons that are having a tough time in tankers? So I said, I want to kill my account when everything expires on March 21st. Where do I go on the page to do that? Oh, you can't navigate to that page. It's a good thing you're talking to me because only we have the links to get you to that file. Well, you sneaky little germ factories. They were very nice to deal with in the beginning, but they've jacked the prices over and over and over the last 5 years. So I went to the link that he sent me and I turned off all the auto renewals. So on March 21st, the company goes away, the website goes away. And fine, there's nothing on there that I want to back up. I'm not going to do the website again, so I don't care. And then yesterday, I got auto charged for some service on there. And I went nicely ballistic. I did not go curmudgeonly. I contacted them with humility and niceness and said, why did I just get charged this? Oh, well, that's a service that's not unselectable as auto renewable. So, well, here's what we can do about this, partner. I said, first of all, refund the money. I don't want that service. Second of all, I want to know anything that's going to auto renew and turn it off. I'm done. Get me out of here. And they were nice and friendly about it. And this time they didn't, no, what can we do to keep you? And I said, fine, charge me $100 a year for everything that I've always been getting. Oh, we can't do that. Well, then turn me off. And so they turned me off. And then I said, you know what? If we try to sell this as a going concern, it needs a website. So I've got this new website where we're hosting ADRAMADA. Thought maybe I'll just transfer the domain name of procoaudio.net over to this host, and I'll whip up a quick website that's good for 1 year, and then I got something to sell as a going concern. And more importantly, people still contact us. I got emails this week for weddings, receptions, DJ gigs. It's a very busy week for quotes. And so I get all my email to the email domain, procoaudio.net, Dave at, or whatever I am. So I thought, well, I better whip up a website then that's still got that domain and that email address so that I can get these emails and, again, have a complete package to sell. So if you ever pay attention to procoaudio.net, it's going to go away for a couple of days. I've got it. I'm going to do the transfer of the domain name on March 18th. Everything else evaporates on the 21st. And then the week of the 21st, I'll whip up a quick Proco Audio domain and email. That was a long story that was kind of pointless, huh? Where we're at, 26 minutes into the show. Did that. Tech news of the week. There wasn't much exciting tech news. Nothing that I was all excited to share. Except for this. I got to start on a project that's been on a back burner for 6 months this week. It's not a hard project. It did a lot of research, and I got a little time in the evening. I don't have to write in the evening. So I haven't gamed since 19 for real on Steam, at least with my favorite game. And so, I've got this Ubuntu daily driver, and lots of people I know of run Steam on there. So I'm going to fire up Steam on Ubuntu. And it went very quickly and very easily. Yay, all my games are there. And I'm going to do a show on it in probably 3 weeks. How to set up Steam on your favorite Linux distro. That doesn't include ARM-based computers, sadly. Steam just doesn't have the tool for that. They run on Macs, they run on Windows, they run on Linux, but not ARM Linux. So I fired up my favorite old game, Borderlands 2, and where's my saved game from Borderlands 2? It's not there. So I started a new campaign from the beginning, and then I called our old friend, Scott. I can use his name and said, hey, Scott, I got Borderlands 2 running on here. You want to join me for a campaign? He said, absolutely. And we couldn't join. And so I went and did the research and said, hey, is this supported cross-platform? He, of course, is playing on PC. And the answer was yes. It works cross-platform. But, always a but, right? It only works if the versions on your Linux system and on your PC system or whatever other cross-platform that you're playing are the same. And the Borderlands for Steam Linux is not the same version as the Borderlands for Windows Steam. So I can't play Scott. So sorry. But it is free. So if anybody sets up Steam on a Linux box, we can play. And all the other stuff works. People saw me playing and have checked in. Hey, I see you're online and gaming. So I was going to talk a little bit about the latest AI news. I'm not going to get into detail on this. You probably saw it in the news, so I'm just going to get things started as a topic. And if you want to comment on it, cool. And if not, thank you, Telewood. Fine. I'm not going to address it today, but I will address it next week when I've got a shorter show. Aptainer we're going to do, and that's a fun and short show, relatively short project. But there is a an LSU star gymnast, Louisiana State University star gymnast, who has a huge TikTok following, 7.2 million followers. Her name is Olivia Dunne, Dunne. And she said something on her TikTok about using an AI, Cactus AI with a K in the middle. And she said, she advocated that it's a valuable tool to help in writing student papers and things like that. And what she specifically said is that she doesn't use it to write papers, but she uses it to spur ideas. She might put in one sentence, see what it comes up with as a continuation, and then, okay, there's some good ideas there. I work with that. Well, Louisiana State University did not take kindly to that, and they sanctioned her with educational misconduct. And they didn't specify in any of the articles that I read what that means academically. Is it going to cost her grades? Is it going to cost her, anything but a little paper slap on the wrist? I don't know. But just another area where AI is impacting the real world. And of course, we've had this discussion in other arenas before. There are moral and ethical implications of using AI to do your work. And I don't know how close to the line this comes. That's a world for philosophers. But hey, I'm as much a philosopher as anybody. I got opinions. And so in short-term future, I would like to talk about that with you guys, see what everybody thinks and what your input. And again, if you've got any thoughts now, throw them in now. I'll save them. And we'll go from there. All right, it's 30. I promised a topic on today's show, and I will try to speed through this. As I mentioned on our last successful show, I'm saving everything, the documents, the PDFs, the images, and whatever. And as I get the ADRAMADA.com website built, there will be an archive in there, and you'll be able to get all this and all the details that I have to speed through. The goal of today's project, which I'm going to do for, 20 minutes, 25 minutes tops, and then we'll do 5 minutes worth of questions and close down, and I'll stop with questions if we see any, is there are reasons and methods to learn the color orders of Ethernet cables, unshielded twisted pair Ethernet cables. Sometimes it's because you're going to make one. Sometimes it's because you might be studying for an exam and you have to know them in order. And there's others sometimes. Let's not list them all. You get the idea. And I want to help you remember them. Now, one of the ways of remembering them, the most useful and the most practical, is to start out with a piece of paper. Here's the order. This goes in pin 1, and this color goes in pin 2, and so forth, and make about 10 cables. Won't take long before you get it so memorized you'll never get it out of your head. But for studying, since you're probably not making 10 cables and crimping them together, we want to come up with a tool or some techniques. So first of all, let's just lay down a little bit of, hey, Jason, hola, buddy. Let's lay down just a little bit of background here. So unshielded twisted pair Ethernet and shielded twisted pair Ethernet, UTP and STP, both is a plastic cable with 8 insulated wires within them. Each set of wires, each pair of wires is twisted about each other. And as you get better and better quality cables, they even take those twisted pairs and twist them about each other further. Gives you greater bandwidth handling capability. So there's 8 wires in there. They're paired as orange, greens, blues, and browns, where there's a solid orange wire and there's a white wire with an orange stripe on it. Same for the blues, a solid blue and a white blue stripe. Ditto for greens and ditto for browns. That's not an accurate statement, so I'm going to do that. So there is a particular order that they need to go in for the sake of following a standard. Turns out they don't have to be in this order as long as you get pin 1 on this side to the appropriate pin on the connector on that side. Sometimes it's pin 1, sometimes it's pin 3. It's going to depend on what you're doing with the cable. So if you want to mix and match and do wrong colors, it'll work. That's a question I get all the time in some of the forums that I support. What if I use green where I'm supposed to use blue? It's okay. It'll work. The problem is it's going to mess with the head of somebody who goes in and troubleshoots there and says, wait a minute, sometimes it's okay to put a green here and sometimes it's okay to put a green there, but we never put a green here. I don't know what to do with this cable. So I'm going to pull it out and replace it with one that's got standard coloring. I had a weird little buffer there. So we want to follow the standards if for no other reason than to make later troubleshooting easier. So let's look at some slides. Here comes our next technology test. Your standard cable is called a straight-through cable. The job of a straight-through cable is to connect a device to another device. And the kinds of devices are pretty strictly defined. So what we can see on here on my slide is that this is a 568B straight through. There are two termination standards for 8-wire Ethernet. One is 568A, the older standard. The other is 568B. Why are there two standards? Because they changed the way they used some formerly unused wires over time. So it's basically a compatibility thing for legacy stuff that we would use old A wiring and modern stuff for B wiring. And I'll get a little bit into that in a couple of minutes here. So 568B, yeah, this is right, is a straight through. Pin 1 on one side and a connector on one side goes to pin 1 on the connector on the other side. Same for 2 to 2, 3 to 3, 4 to 4, 5 to 5, 6 to 6. You get the idea. I'm not going to read that through any more than you. Now, only 4 of these wires are used. The oranges and the greens. The blues, yeah, these are blue and white, and these are brown and white. They're not used. You don't have to do anything with them. You can clip them off. You can mix and match them with whatever connector you want. And it won't matter. It doesn't hurt. Now, what I'm saying here is true 10 years ago. I'm going to fix this in a little later, but it's fair to start with now. So if you want to make a straight through cable that's just pin 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, and 6 to 6, it's going to work. If you want to use this cable in a power over Ethernet situation, you must hook up the blues 4 to 4, 5 to 5, and the browns 7, 7, 8, 8. But I'm not going to get into PoE today. I just want to talk about 568A and B standards. So where do we use straight through cables? You use them whenever you connect dissimilar devices. Okay, so a host, a computer to a switch, a printer to a switch, a router to a switch. Everything goes to a switch. A host and a printer, they're actually both hosts. So those are the same thing. You can't use a straight through cable when you have same devices. You can't use a straight through cable in a host to host configuration, in a host to printer configuration, in a router to router configuration, in a switch to switch configuration. And some of you are thinking, but Dave, I can and I do because of this magic thing. Bear with me. We'll get to the magic. Next slide, please. Oops. So here's some slides. So here is a host to a switch. A host to a switch. These are therefore straight through cables. Cannot use a straight through cable host to host. So what do you do if you want to hook up two similar devices? You create a crossover cable. A crossover cable is always 1 on one side to 3 on the other side, 2 on the first side to 6 on the other side. And then you do the same thing on the other side. 1 on the other side to 3 on the first side, 2 on the other side to 6. These blues and browns, again, you can ignore them. You can put them anywhere you want, unless you're doing PoE. But if you're going to follow the standard, they stay just like a straight through, 4 to 4, 5 to 5, 7 to 7, and 8 to 8. There's a crossover cable, and this is a, well, no, that's it. That's what it is. So where do you use them? Whenever you have similar devices. So a switch to switch, that's valid. Now we want to talk about a technology called MDI, Media Dependent Interface. And there's related technologies, MDI, MDIX, and Auto MDIX. What an MDI port is, back in the day, was a non-data port. This was a port that was used exclusively so that you could use a straight-through cable from this port to any port on another switch, including an MDI port. But what you had on this MDI port was, well, this was dedicated. Okay, that's all. So I'm going to use I'm sorry, I lied. This is a crossover cable. I use a crossover cable from this MDI port to the MDI port of another switch. But then they created MDIX, which was an MDI connector, except it had a little button associated with it. And if you use a straight through cable from this switch to another switch, you would press the MDI button on one of the two switches, and internally it would rewire the connector as a crossover connector. Sweet. So now I never needed to buy a crossover cable. I could always have straight through cables on every port of my switch, including switch to switches, as long as I flicked the button on one of these MDI ports of one of the involved switches, and it became a crossover port. Then they said, it's the 20th century. We can make them smart enough to figure out if you've plugged in a straight through cable, and if you have, they'll negotiate, and one of them will automatically do an MDI internal crossover. We had 5 there. No, not yet. Okay, so I can now use, but if I don't do that, if I'm going to use a crossover cable, it's for connecting, straight through cable, as we said earlier. Let's go back to the straight through line. So now if I use a straight through cable, I can do a host to a switch, and I can even do a switch to a switch as long as it supports MDI, MDIX, or Auto MDIX. So then there comes a question here that says, do network interface cards support MDIX? And when I wrote this tutorial, the answer was no. And we talked about this in back channel, and this person said, no, I've done straight throughs and it works on this machine and that machine. So I went back to the books and the research and said, Auto MDIX is an available feature in a network interface card, but it's an optional feature. It may not be implemented by some manufacturers. It is not implemented in Raspberry Pis. I can't use a straight through cable between a pair of Pis. I got to use a crossover. But I got 2 Dell laptops in here. I can just straight through from there, and it'll work just like a switch. The system will, the NICs will negotiate with each other. Oh, this is a straight through. Hang on. I'll internally Auto MDIX one of my systems here. But it doesn't have auto or even manual MDI or MDIX. Then you got to use a crossover cable, as we said earlier, for connecting similar devices. To make a straight through cable, wire both ends for the same standard. 568A on both ends if you've got old legacy systems, or 568B on both ends. So So let's go. Is it on the forward switch here? Yeah. All right. So here's a B standard. And we can tell B standards because the cable colors, the wire colors that matter, are always the oranges and the greens. 568A, are alphabetical. And so the greens come before oranges. So a 568A is always going to start with the green wires. And then as we get deeper into the connector, we go to the orange wires. So B, all you got to know is swap out the oranges for the greens. That is the memory trick. That's the whole point of today's presentation. When you are wiring 568As and Bs, A's are alphabetical. And what you've got to commit to memory is that 4 and 5, well, two things to memory. First of all, odd numbers always have stripes. Even numbered pins always have solids. So we're always going to start on pin 1 with stripes. We know that we always use pins 1, 2, 3, and 6 for moving data. That leaves us 4 and 5 and 7 and 8. So 4 is, and you got to know that the blues are in the middle and the browns are on the end. So 4 is an even number. I'm going to stick a blue solid there. 5 is an odd number, a blue stripe. 7 is an odd number, a brown stripe. 8's an even number. So note this, right? Stripe, solid, stripe, solid, stripe, solid, stripe, solid. It's always the way. It's always going to be stripes and solids no matter what you're wiring. So if I'm going to make a straight through cable 568B, I'll start out of alphabetical order with the oranges and the greens buried internal on the 3s and 6s. And if I'm going to make a crossover cable, that's why if I make an A cable, 568A, it's going to be the same thing, except it's going to start with green and white stripe, solid green, orange and white stripe, and then down here on pin 6, solid orange. You can't memorize this once by hearing it. You got to make notes one time. You got to study it a little bit. But this is one of those things that you put 30 minutes into study and some flashcards, and you will nail this thing down. So, looking at this connector, we're looking into the back of the connector, and it's got the locking pin down on the bottom. How many done on time here? 47. Okay. I know just by looking at this that if this is a 568A or a 568B termination, it starts not in alphabetical order. Starts with the oranges. It's correct. It's stripe, solid, stripe, solid, stripe, solid, stripe, solid. Cool. So the oranges go first, stripe, solid, then a green stripe. The green solids over on 6. 1, 2, 3, and 6 are always the magic. The blues are always wired straight through. 4 and 5 for solid and stripe. You get it. I'm not going to read that to you again. That's cool. So here's a B and an A cable. I know it's not very well blown up. Let me see if I can blow that up just a tad more. That's kind of sort of. So here's an A. Alphabetical order. The greens go before the oranges. Stripe, solid, stripe, solid. And now here's the newer one, the B. Just reverse the greens and the oranges. Keep stripes where stripes are. Keep solids where solids are. And cool and sweet. Easy stuff. Move that back to scale so the next graphic will come up correct. I had a question from somebody once who said, I'm making a straight through cable. Or making it, I don't know, I'm sure he was making a straight through, but it doesn't matter. He said, what we do is to get more efficient use out of our cables is we strip these wires way back and we put the oranges and greens in a connector over here, and then we take the blues and browns and split them out and do another connector. They're like a Y connector here. And so I can use one length of cable and hook up two different things that are, close together or in the same wall jacks or something like that. And I was aghast. I was agog. First of all, in concept, it kind of works. There's problems with it, technically speaking, because there's going to be some impact on the max length. But here's the problem. We normally use pins 4, 5, 7, and 8 for PoE. And if you do that, somebody throws a PoE power injector on the cables that have the blues on it, they're going to fry the NIC that other end winds up plugging into. So that's just a really, really bad idea. You cannot be that cheap. All right, did the memorization thing. Now, what if you want to make a crossover cable? Ooh. A crossover cable we can get from here. All you have to do is, I said it before. In fact, let's go back to that graphic, and then I'm going to come back to this one because this is really cool. Okay, here's a crossover cable. 1, 2 are oranges. They go to 3, 6 on the other side. 3, 6 are greens. They go to 1, 2 on the other side. Well, folks, if you look at this, just ignore everything on the left-hand side of this graphic. 1 and 2 are greens. 3 is orange. 6 is orange. Solid blue. This is a 568A termination. It's alphabetical. The greens come before the oranges. Now, what do we got over here? All we did was swap the oranges and the greens. Instead of the greens being on 1 and 2, oranges are on 1 and 2. This is a 568B termination. This is how to make a crossover cable. All you got to do is a 568A connector on one side of a cable and a 568B termination on the other side of the cable, and you have created a crossover. And again, if you don't forget that, get used to memorizing 1 to 3, 2 to 6, 1 to 3, 2 to 6. And folks, that's it. The slideshow continues to the topic that I'm going to get into in 2 weeks. And that's this. Making crossover cables for gigabit Ethernet is a different animal. We still got 1 to 3, 2 to 6, 1 to 3, 2 to 6, but now you can see I don't have a straight through blue 4 to 4. I don't have a straight through blue with white stripe 5 to 5. We got to get into that a little deeper, and I'll do that in a subsequent show. That's everything you need to know. It's a cakewalk. I covered it in 22 minutes. And you know me, I drag things out. I'll have these slides and everything available as a downloadable thing within a week or so. But everything I just told you is an incompletion. It's true and accurate for 100 megabit Ethernet and slower 10 megabit Ethernet. It works partially on gigabit Ethernet. You can do 1, 2, 3, 6. In fact, you can do 1 to 1, 2 to 3. Straight throughs are exactly the same. Okay, that's a cakewalk. So 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, 4 to 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8, 8. Works perfect for gigabit Ethernet. It's only when you get into the crossover cables that we come to a new world of complexity. And I'm going to do that in about a 15-minute presentation in a week or so, 2 weeks or so. All right, that take care of all that nonsense. So I want to share with you, just before we close down and answer any final questions here, common questions that I get on the various forums that I support. First question, which standard should I use? Unless you are adding or replacing a cable in a legacy system, use the current standard, 568B. If you got to work in a legacy environment, they still want the same kind of stuff. Maybe you're going to upgrade the category of wiring so that it can support future faster, but for the sake of troubleshooting and color management, you use the old 568A. I answered that question. I answered this question. What if I use different color order, but I wire it correctly? It'll work. It just confuses troubleshooting later. There is a thing called a loop back cable. It's one RJ45 connector where you take 2 wires. One of the wires you put into pin 1 and then take the other end of that wire and put it into pin 3. take the second wire into pin 2 and the other end of that into pin 6. Crimp it down. 1 to 3, 2 to 6. Right? That should be a magical formula. And that creates a loopback wire. Any signal that tries to go out of this RJ45 or into the wires will come zipping right back through that. And that's another topic we're going to talk about down the road, how to test network interface cards using ping, right? Because we all ping 127.001 does not do what a lot of people say it does. So I want to find out a way to test our signals actually leaving my network interface card and our signals actually coming back into my network interface card. I mentioned the term RJ45. The correct term for that is 8P8C, 8-pole 8 connector. And I want last thing to mention here. So as I said, you could theoretically use any color order that makes you happy. There are 16 million color orders that makes that possible, right? With 8 different colors and 8 different positions, it's 8 to the 8th, 16,777,216 possible color combinations. So there's another good reason not to mix and match colors, because there's just no way to figure out any kind of a standard from that. All right, we're done with that nonsense. Let me get this thing set up. Check final questions here. It worked. I'm just kind of happy that technically speaking, we got a show. We got a little bit of a presentation. They'll get better. We're early days here. We're a long way to go here. All right, get rid of you. I don't need you anymore. Let's go see what happened on post. So Jason popped in. My man. We had the same turnout as we did last week, which is 3 times the turnout as we did the first week. So we're on our way. We'll get more. I didn't advertise this one because I was concerned we had the same technical problems that we got the week before. And I just want to make sure that we're working here and the old crowd knows what's going on. The 3 of you who have posted here so far, you have all received my future invite for a new position. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show here, it's happening fast, really, really fast. So get ready for contact by early mid next week when I'll tell you what and when you will actually start your new responsibilities. So exciting! This project is under the charge of one of our senior executives, but they don't have time, and so they handed it off to me. I guess I'm the minion here. I am the driver of the thing, and that's why I reached out to you guys. What do we got here? So Jason says, always get a cable tester to make sure you got good connection. You're absolutely right. If you can afford one, a Fluke network analyzer. They make cheap Chinese versions of them, and they're all right, and they're not going to be as long lasting as a good Fluke. We got Flukes in our system that are banging on 20 years old. They don't know gigabit crossover wire maps, so that's no help. Pixie sticks. Jason, I was hearing voice and thought someone was outside, but it's the video. Thought I was going crazy. No, you didn't miss anything. You weren't here at the very beginning. All right, well, what do you say we go for our first record? We started on time. We're going to finish on time in, and I got 1 minute and 15 seconds to vamp. I got that up and running. That's up and running. Oh, man. We are just having some kind of fun here. So I'm going to call this a valid test. I'll work on the audio and video sync issues this week. Next week, 2 days after Pi Day, we're going to do a Raspberry Pi project. It's going to be a container-oriented project. So cool. So amazingly knockout cool what we're going to do here and why. We did containers back in Drama a million years ago. I did a Docker container. Not knowing what I know now about a couple of the problems with Docker containers, and I'm going to solve that el problemo. And I'm going to show you a really, 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 really easy way to make a container and put something in it. And while we can do this on any popular distro, am I going to use an ATEM for this? No, I am not. As I said, I will switch to ATEM, but I don't have enough input sources with HDMI outputs. Yeah, Pis. I got Pis all day long to other computers, but I need a pair of cameras, and I have no cameras that are full HDMI output that can run with clean HDMI output for 1 to 2 hours. The show will eventually go 2 hours. All right, well, let's wind this thing up then. That doesn't. Yeah. So wish of the yeah, I can finish this on time. I am wishing you all a great rest of the week. Take care of each other. Take care of yourself. Take serious steps to stay healthy. There's no point in doing any more of this, is there? If at all possible, call or visit your parents, and never forget, technology is great. This is a technology show, and we celebrate technology. But as you know, the greatest resource we have are you and I. And so with that, good night. I will see you on Mike's show on Monday and Wednesday, and then see you again on ADRAMADA next Thursday, a couple days after Pi. Until then, I am out of here. Hey, thanks everybody for turning up. It'll get more people. It'll get better. Good night, all.